I believe that every movie adheres to the 29-point story structure. No matter if the writer outlines first or if they dive in blind, the end product follows the same 29 beats. Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Men Tell No Tales is my 51st piece of evidence. Okay, look, I'll take full responsibility for jinxing this movie, what with my "this franchise hasn't missed yet" talk. I've been dreading writing this intro because I really don't know what to say, you know? This felt like someone gluing chunks of other movies together and haphazardly standing it on the table for all to see. It's not all bad. The visual effects are the best I've seen yet, and some of the jokes had me howling. But now I understand what people meant when they didn't believe that this was the real Jack Sparrow, and why so many hold the first 4 movies so dear. Nevertheless, no matter how chaotic it felt, this semi-misfire strikes every beat of the 29-point story structure. Let's begin. A tight focus on the core elements of the protagonist's personality, inner conflict, and situation. We start on young Henry and his mission to save Will Turner from the Flying Dutchman, and his daring knowledge of all things mythical and seafaring, who was left alive by Captain Salazar to deliver a message of revenge to Jack Sparrow. Where, why, and how the protagonists exist in their world, with a focus on why they don't quite fit in. We meet Karina, condemned for witchcraft by a society that fears strong women, and catch up with Jack, or at least a version of him compiled in the editing room, who's in league with a handful of anonymous pirates, plus loyal, faithful, steadfast Gibbs. A singular event that's never happened before, and is destined to lead the characters away from their status quo. Gibbs leaves Jack's side, along with the crew, to seek their fortunes under a different command. An examination of what's different in light of the something new, what's the same in spite of it in relation to the status quo. Jack yearns for freedom in the open seas. Then Karina makes contact with Henry and launches a partnership to hunt the Trident. The discovery that things are less than ideal, or an exploration of how badly things are. Jack gives up the compass, and Salazar is freed from Devil's Triangle. Then Jack is arrested and sentenced to death. Characters dedicate their effort to a specified goal, which is smaller in scope than the primary objective of the third act. Karina unlocks the first clue to the Trident's location, while Henry enlists Jack to help free Will Turner from the Flying Dutchman. A brief checklist of the story elements needed for the second act. The whims and egos of the men in charge, the threat of looming death, and of course, supernatural elements. The singular event that launches the characters into the wild jungle of the second act, also called an oh shit moment. Barbossa, filled with dread, sets off to sacrifice Jack Sparrow to Salazar and save his fleet. Oh shit. Characters must learn all new rules and expectations distinct to this adventure. Jack and Karina face execution simultaneously, with nary an idea of how to escape. Then Henry enters the picture, proving that heroics aren't quite his thing. Characters showcase their ability to grow in the areas this adventure requires, typically through external means. Gibbs and crew return and blast Jack out of trouble. They gather up everything they need to start the treasure hunt, then discover the fast way that their new boat is seaworthy. Characters face legitimate and understandable reasons to deviate from their stated convictions, agendas, or desires. Barbossa sails into the presence of Salazar to broker a deal. Then Jack tricks Karina into revealing information about the map. An escalation of problems that vex the characters. Shanza points the British in the direction of the Trident. Henry fails to force Jack into any action he doesn't want to take, who then offers fatherly advice in exchange for a tip. Characters evolve internally by utilizing everything they've gathered and learned. Henry finds common ground between he and Karina. Barbossa scrambles for more time before he's killed and tricks Salazar into explaining his backstory. Journey-weary characters reconcile the reality of their ongoing situation with who they were in the first act. We're shown how Jack first came into possession of the compass, which he gave up in the first act. As Salazar laments the trickery that trapped him in the Devil's Triangle, then Jack the Sparrow becomes a pirate captain. A singular event that strikes at the protagonist's core conflict. Barbossa helps Salazar catch up to Jack, and there's no turning back from here. Characters find needed answers for both external and internal conflicts. Karina reveals her areas of study and how she's navigating. Then Gibbs and crew face the specter of death and the living dead. The clarified objective is realized in part or in whole, though it's meaningless without the completion of the primary objective. Jack keeps his ship safe from Salazar, but only because his crew commits another mutiny. In existential conflict that wounds the character's sense of self, worldly identity, or their journey. Karina abandons lifeboat. Jack and Henry are attacked by dead sharks. Jack gets stuck in place by a most unfortunate board breakage as the dead charge at him. Then he lassos a dead shark and speeds to safety. An undeniable win for the protagonist, typically in direct connection to the rebirth. Jack lands on land, where Salazar cannot walk. Then Karina's skepticism is finally destroyed. A grand loss directly connected to the character's newfound inability to quit the journey. Karina falls into a trap. Gibbs and crew are captured by the British and beaten mercilessly. Then Jack and Henry fall into the trap with Karina. A thematic freefall tied directly to the heavy price. Salazar strings up Barbossa's crew for slaughter, while Jack and friends are captured by islanders. A singular event that robs the protagonist of seemingly any chance of success. Barbossa strikes a desperate deal with Salazar to hand him Jack Sparrow. Characters cannot return to their starting personas and must turn to face the primary objective. Barbossa catches up with Jack but reveals his Black Pearl double cross, then faces his inability to navigate to the secret island, while Gibbs and crew mount an escape of their own and Barbossa gives Karina the wheel. Characters move towards the climax while utilizing the major swings and sneaky misdirections of the story. The mystery of Karina's parentage is revealed as Barbossa. The British enter the fray, but then they're munched on by Salazar's ship, and were treated to some grand old seafaring action. Then they beat the dead to the island but run ashore. The final confrontation between the protagonist and the antagonistic force. The ruby from the diary unlocks the location of the trident. Salazar possesses Henry to walk on land and fight, then wins the trident and wields its power. The singular event where the protagonist finally confronts their place in the status quo. Henry breaks the trident and ends every curse at sea, including his father's. The direct aftermath of the climax. Salazar and crew become human, much to their eventual dismay. The Black Pearl swoops in for the rescue, then Barbossa sacrifices himself to protect his daughter. The consequences of the climax in relation to other characters and the status quo. Karina adopts the name Skywalker. Barbossa. Will Turner is free from the curse of the Flying Dutchman and is reunited with Elizabeth, who is now a mute, apparently. A tight focus on the protagonist contrasted from the opening. Captain Jack and Monkey Jack make peace, and they sail the Black Pearl into the sunset. And there you have it, my 51st example to support my argument that all movies follow the exact same story structure, regardless of how the writer approaches their craft. Dead Men Tell No Tales played fast and loose with sequence times, sometimes touching base for a brief moment before moving on. Still, every step of the 29-point story structure is present. But does this conclusion to the Will Turner saga follow the same plot beats as a claustrophobic horror comedy murder mystery starring Reddit darling Milana Weintraub? Yes, it arguably does. Next on my docket, Werewolves Within. Please subscribe to stay up to date with this and future videos, and please like and comment with your thoughts and reactions. I'll talk to you next time.